We need to do many things to become a global city. But despite our best efforts, we know that things do go wrong from time to time. And if we didn't quite get it right, I'm sorry, but we will try and do better the next time. So the government must intervene more to keep ours a fair and a just society. Do not fear. Do not lose heart. You have my word. I will see this through. I'm determined to hand over Singapore intact and in good working order to the next team.
Singapore in 2004. When Hsien Loong took office as Singapore's third Prime Minister. And Singapore 2 decades later under his leadership.
We can't stand still because the world is changing, our people are changing, and so must Singapore, and so must the way we govern Singapore. To succeed, we have to balance between continuity and change.
I, Hsien Loong.
I, Hsien Loong.
Lee had come into office with the Trade and Finance Ministries already in his portfolio and 20 years of political experience. One of Lee's first assignments after entering politics in 1984 was steering Singapore out of its first recession post-independence.
High in Singapore. I think that's a very common complaint.
And in 2001, he would chair a newly formed Economic Review Committee tasked to remake Singapore's economy. Lee took over a Singapore which had transformed from third world to first, with a thriving economy, world-class infrastructure, and well-established industries. Lee had to rally a population that had more sophisticated needs and aspirations.
It's a big step from being DPM to being PM. It's not just working out policies or managing the economy. It's really uniting all Singaporeans, making sure everybody knows and feels that we're on the same venture together, and building our nation and making each generation of Singaporeans feel proud to be Singaporean, proud to carry that pink IC and that red passport wherever we go.
Lee's venture included upgrading Singapore into a vibrant global city like New York, Paris, or London.
This has to be a city which is full of life and energy and excitement, a place where people want to live, work, and play, where they're stimulated to be active, to be creative, and to enjoy life.
He wanted Singapore to be the cosmopolitan hub of Asia, a magnet for capital, talent, and ideas, turning the little red dot into Asia's center for business, innovation, and influence. A well-designed urban environment would make Singapore a choice home. But first, Lee had to remake Singapore's economy. Singapore had just recovered from the Asian financial crisis, with the US and European economies experiencing slowdowns. Southeast Asia grappled with sluggish external demand, and Singapore was not spared. China and India were becoming keen competitors for production and investments. Lee's strategy was to get ahead of the region in a new frontier, the knowledge-based economy.
We built up this economy based on efficiency, based on cost effectiveness. Now you have to go beyond efficiency. You must still be efficient, but you must now develop and exploit knowledge, R&D. Compete on the basis of knowledge and innovation and talent, and not just on costs. And that way, we can move the economy to the next level.
Lee's government aimed to create more jobs, stimulate investment, and raise standards of living in the long term. To achieve these goals, Lee called for a shift in mindsets.
We have to see opportunities rather than challenges in new situations. We have to be less conventional. We must be prepared to venture. And you've got to do this as individuals. We've got to do this as a government. And I think we have to do it as a society.
The government took the lead by liberalizing the economy, allowing private enterprise to seek out prospects and new ventures in Singapore's next phase of growth. Schools would also teach less to give students room to explore and discover their talents. And Lee surprised many when he asked Singaporeans to consider a controversial idea, one that he had twice rejected since it first came up in 1985. He championed the development of 2 integrated resorts, totaling $10 billion in foreign investment. Lee saw an opportunity that will place Singapore on the world stage.
We need to do many things to become a global city. A casino by itself is not essential to this vision, but an integrated resort is not just a casino. An integrated resort is one significant idea that we must consider and that will help us to reinvent Singapore.
Well known for being clean and efficient, Singapore was also seen as unexciting. Visitors were spending less time in the country, and the Trade Ministry proposed to reinvigorate tourism offerings. The IRs, complete with hotels, theatres, theme parks, retail, dining, and casinos, would transform Singapore into a vibrant destination. A statement to signal Singapore's openness to new ideas, underscored by tangible benefits for the economy.
The IRs will change our downtown skyline and transform Sentosa into a truly high-quality resort destination. They will make Singapore a centre for tourism, business and conventions, and attract hundreds of thousands more tourists each year. Altogether, MTI estimates that the 2 IRs will create about 35,000 jobs, counting jobs within the IRs plus spin-offs throughout the economy. These jobs in the hospitality sector will complement the jobs we are creating in other sectors such as manufacturing, financial services, or transportation.
When the idea of a casino first, rather my concern is
Public concerns over the social impact of casinos were addressed and debated intensely. And Lee took pains to assure citizens of the measures taken to address problem gambling.
In fact, the Cabinet started off mostly against integrated resorts. As we discussed the matter among ourselves and understood better what the IRs actually involved, our views gradually shifted. When we saw the results of the request for concepts, we knew that we had to take the bids very seriously and that if we said no, there would be serious consequences. By acting now, we seize a window of opportunity to get ahead of our competitors. If we say no, the best proposals for the IR, together with the investments and the jobs, will most likely not disappear, but go somewhere else in the region. Then we'll be forced to play catch-up, and we'll be in a much weaker position.
The decision was made for 2 integrated resorts, one in Marina Bay and another on Sentosa Island. Integrated resorts were just one facet of the city's makeover under Lee. Plans were also made to upgrade old housing precincts, construct new towns, and rejuvenate the shopping belt. Downtown, besides the IR, Lee's full vision for Marina Bay included a new business and financial center that would propel Singapore from a regional to a global financial hub. And some very special gardens. Setting aside 101 hectares of prime land for public gardens in the city centre was not an easy decision given Singapore's size. But Lee and his ministers believed that an iconic showcase of nature and innovative engineering was the way forward.
This is just one example of how we're transforming Singapore's living environment. It may be a densely populated city, maybe one of the densest in the world, but we are determined that our people should be able to live comfortably, pleasantly, graciously. To be in touch with nature, to be never far from green spaces and blue waters.
As Singapore's economy matures, new technologies were disrupting entire industries. Lee and his team would continue to review and renew strategies for growth. New growth areas were identified in the digital economy to make Singapore a tech hub. 80 of the world's top 100 technology firms now have a presence in Singapore.
I see an owl.
Industries were shapeshifted with the latest trends, helping businesses and SMEs redesign jobs and improve productivity to stay competitive. There were also strategies to help workers update and upgrade skills to remain employable. Positioning itself for the future, Singapore made a $1 billion investment into artificial intelligence over the next 5 years. Lee explained Singapore's ability to attract new enterprises.
Our business environment, everything clicks. You can register your company, $2 and 20 minutes is done. It's a tight, high-functioning system where the whole is more than the sum of its parts. Many business leaders recognize that there is this special Singapore premium. It's not just a figment of our imagination. Therefore, they put major projects in Singapore, even though we are not always the lowest cost location, or even the biggest market, or their home country.
As Lee hoped, Singapore began drawing the crowds. For the first Formula One night race, the Youth Olympic Games, and more recently, Taylor Swift's concert, Singapore was the only Southeast Asian stop.
1, 2, 3.
Singapore's upgrades of its key infrastructure facilities like its airport and seaport would be awe-inspiring. As he steps down, Lee's vision for Singapore set out in 2004 has paid off handsomely. Singapore's GDP per capita had grown 3 times, from about $28,000 in 2004 to $85,000 in 2023. Planning and building Singapore for the next 50 years, Changi Airport Terminal 5 and Tuas Megaport will keep Singapore connected to the world, thriving as a trading hub. New estates in the redeveloped Paya Lebar area and greater southern waterfront will be more livable, greener and sustainable.
Our island may be small, but it holds great potential. Just as past generations planned for and created the Singapore that we live in today, we too must never stop imagining and building the future Singapore for the next generation and beyond.
Hsien Loong would need to steer his vision for Singapore amid tumultuous times. As he put in place the building blocks of long-term growth, several critical situations would test the nation. On 28 February 2008, Singaporeans woke to the news of an island-wide manhunt.
Jemaah Islamiyah in Singapore, Mas Selamat Kastari, has escaped.
Mas Selamat Kastari, a member of the Al-Qaeda-linked terrorist group Jemaah Islamiyah, had escaped from detention. He had been held for plotting to hijack a plane and crash it into Singapore's international airport. Questions were raised in public and parliament about what went wrong.
Despite our best efforts, we know that things do go wrong from time to time. Our first priority is to respond to the immediate crisis and then to identify their shortcomings and put them right. We must also take steps to ensure that the problem does not recur. Singaporeans need to know what went wrong and what the government will do to fix things.
a setback to Singapore's counter-terrorism efforts. The incident was a test of social cohesion and community resilience. The interracial and religious confidence circles that were set up in 2002 to promote racial and religious harmony at the grassroots level helped calm the communities. Mas Selamat was eventually recaptured in Malaysia more than a year later. He is one of 4 JI members still detained in Singapore. This is despite the efforts of Muslim scholars who formed the Religious Rehabilitation Group in 2003 to counsel and counter ideological beliefs of detained Jamaah Islamiyah members and their families. 2 decades later, Lee expressed his gratitude to them, saying 90% of the 140 Singaporeans detained for terrorism-related activities have been reintegrated into society.
We needed to tackle the source of the danger, which was the radical misinterpretation of Islam. This was an ideological battle involving hearts and minds. We are grateful to a small group of religious scholars who stepped forward to counsel and rehabilitate the JI members.
The terrorism threat would also evolve with some 12 people detained, homegrown, lone wolf attackers, self-radicalized on the internet. Lee launched the SG Secure movement in 2016 and called on everyone to come together to safeguard Singapore and our way of life against terror threats. Community response roundtables planned for emergencies in neighborhoods. Organizations, workplaces, and individuals empowered with the attributes and abilities to step up in a crisis.
When we are confronted with something like this, we can respond in 2 ways. Either with fear, cower, hunker down, pretend nothing is happening, pretend that the threats don't exist, hope that the troubles will pass us by. Or we can stand up, look the problems straight in the face, understand the dangers we face, know what we can do what we can now and continuing into the future, and make sure that if something does happen, we are ready.
Responding to new challenges, Lee saw a need to update the law on religious harmony to strengthen defenses against foreign influence and the government's ability to respond to offensive online content. He would also adjust policies on race and religion gradually and carefully.
Younger Singaporeans are more accepting of racial and religious differences.
In the 2021 National Day rally, Lee announced that Muslim nurses could wear the tudung with their uniform if they wished to do so. Over the years, there was a question of whether Muslim women could wear the tudung in professional settings. Discussing the issue with Malay Muslim community leaders, Lee made clear policies would not change for school uniforms or for the uniformed services, but were not set in stone for nurses.
The government has been watching the situation closely. We observe, by and large, interactions between the races remain comfortable. Specifically in hospitals, some of the non-uniformed staff do wear the tudung, and we saw that their relationship with patients and colleagues was all right. We are making a careful adjustment to keep our racial and religious harmony in good order.
In the same year as Mas Selamat's escape, Lee and his cabinet had to deal with a crisis of a different sort. 11th October 2008, over 500 angry investors turned up at Speaker's Corner. Many were retirees, seeking redress for lost life savings. They wanted the authorities to investigate financial institutions for selling them $500 million in financial products, which became worthless when American investment bank Lehman Brothers collapsed. Some 10,000 people were affected. The US banking crisis rippled through economies. laying off millions across the world. Thousands of Singaporeans lost their jobs. Lee and his cabinet took swift action, pledging $2.9 billion to support the economy.
This is a very serious problem for us. GDP this year we've forecast -2% to -5%. It could be worse if the global economy worsens.
GDP contracted 10% in the first quarter of 2009, Singapore's worst recession since independence. Then, for the first time, the government drew $4.9 billion from past reserves for a $20.5 billion budget focused on preserving jobs and shoring up the financial industry. The government also earmarked $150 billion in past reserves to guarantee deposits in commercial banks.
Our reserves are an important strength. We've accumulated them. They will tide us over this period. We can tap on them for good programs which we need to, when we need to, like the jobs credit and the special risk sharing initiative in the budget. And that is what the reserves are for a very rainy day. At the same time, the reserves standing there give confidence to investors that the economy has resources, is strong.
Under Lee's leadership, the strategy was to incentivize businesses to retain workers. About 120,000 employers received cash grants for a year to support an estimated 300,000 jobs on the line. At the same time, Lee's teams secured new investments and created new jobs for Singaporeans. But he had some strong advice for workers at the time.
If you have a job, hang on to it. Do your best, keep the job. For those without jobs, make every effort to get employed. Take the job even if it isn't your favorite one, not your ideal one. Having work is much, much better than having no work.
In a year, Singapore rebounded into double-digit growth and full employment faster than we expected. By 2011, the government was able to replenish funds from its reserves. Lee's policies were paying off, but there was a price to high economic growth over the years. Lee empathized with ground sentiments and responded to them in his 2011 election rally speech.
High growth is good, but because of growth, we have to take in somewhat more foreign workers. We have to be prepared to accept a little bit more congestion for the time being. HDB flats. We had a sharp recession just 3 years ago. We had a surplus of flats. We didn't expect that in the middle of 2009, after this sharp downturn, things would pick up suddenly, strongly, and the wind would catch us, and everybody would want flats, and suddenly the demand would press flat prices up. If we could have predicted this, I think we would have ramped up our building plan earlier, built more flats earlier, and I think we would have saved many Singaporeans some angst. I hope you will understand that when these problems vex you or disturb you or upset your lives, please bear with us. We are trying our best on your behalf. And if we didn't quite get it right, I'm sorry, but we will try and do better the next time. Majulah Singapura!
The People's Action Party faced one of its strongest challenges since independence. Opposition parties contested 82 out of 87 parliamentary seats. The Workers' Party won a group representation constituency. It was the first time the opposition won a GRC since the scheme started in 1988. The government made changes, starting with limiting immigration.
These are policies where the benefits are there, but they are long-term. The downsides are immediate. The side effects are visible, and people react to them, and we have to respond to this.
To retain a Singaporean core in the workforce through the Jobs Bank, the Fair Consideration Framework, and Skills Future, workers had to increase productivity. In housing, supply was quickly ramped up with a total of 77,000 flats built between 2011 and 2013, a record bout of construction. A slew of property cooling measures were introduced to keep housing affordable. In 2014, public and private residential prices declined for the first time in 13 years. The government also embarked on a $1 billion plan to upgrade the mass rapid transport system, expanding capacity and increasing frequency. Progressively, new trains and stations were rolled out as new MRT lines opened.
It will take a while to solve these problems because they are big and complicated issues, but we are heading in the right direction and things will gradually get better. So please be patient.
Towards the end of Lee's time in office, two incidents hogged the headlines. A minister was investigated and then charged in court for corruption.
It's particularly when we are tested that we must show our mettle, put our principles into action, regardless of any embarrassment or political cost. Deal with the matter without fear or favor and get to the bottom of the matter.
Separately, it was revealed that two members of parliament were involved in an inappropriate relationship. All three members resigned from parliament.
Our commitment to honesty and incorruptibility. This commitment is absolutely non-negotiable.
Prime Minister Hsien Loong's time in office is marked by social policies that sought to build a resilient nation, with no one left behind. In his first speech as Prime Minister, Lee rallied Singaporeans to create an open and inclusive society.
We are one nation together, building a future for ourselves and our people. As we prosper, all communities will progress, and no one will be left behind. We will look after the less educated and the elderly who have helped build Singapore. And we must also have a place in our hearts and our lives for the disabled, who are our brothers and sisters too.
Lee's vision of a global city would be defined by how widely society benefits from the country's prosperity. Putting words into action, Lee launched the ComCare Fund in 2005 to provide social assistance to low-income Singaporeans. He was now leading a more affluent country, but older and less educated citizens were struggling to keep up.
Income inequality is starker than before. The most successful Singaporeans will continue to do very well. The average Singaporeans will be able to make improvements in their lives and are much better off than people in most other countries. But at the lower end, incomes have risen too slowly, far too slowly, especially in real terms. We're seeing our society stratifying, which means that children of successful people are doing better, that children of less successful people are doing less well. So the first approach towards dealing with our social problems is to strengthen the ability for people to succeed. But the second approach, which must complement the first one, is to strengthen our social safety nets, giving your peer a helping hand, helping the person who can't quite make it. Well, come along, I help you take the next step.
Lee would tilt policies towards giving more help to those who need it. From 2007, the introduction of workfare saw the government topping up salaries of lower-wage citizens in cash and in the Central Provident Fund to encourage them to keep working and saving for retirement.
On condition you work, you make the effort, well, I'm prepared to match you, and I will help to top up your savings, a little bit towards your take-home pay, but if you make the effort, we will help make your life better.
For Lee, education is a means to uplift all Singaporeans, to spread the benefits of growth and improve income equality.
Keiko, what are you doing here?
He invested heavily in education and training for all ages, with programs like Skills Future for lifelong learning, so Singaporeans could progress through individual efforts. Lee and his team created more pathways for secondary and post-secondary education. To help all Singaporeans with the cost of living, fees for preschools were lowered and more subsidies were made available. Programs like Kids Start help support low-income families to give their young children equal opportunity to the best possible start in life. There was more support for children with learning disabilities, for the disabled, and those with special needs.
So much more attention and resources have been given to students with special education needs. There used to be no employment agency for those who are disabled but can still work. But now there is a SG Enable, job placement, job support schemes, and all these help give life, give at least some quality of life, some chance of employment to those with disabilities. Universal medical insurance coverage, for example, is not a given for persons with disabilities. But with MediShield Life, this has become universal coverage so that everyone, regardless of his abilities, actually is covered for his congenital or pre-existing medical conditions.
With the introduction of MediShield Life in 2015, Lee expanded insurance coverage to everyone for life. Over the years, he worked on reducing the citizens' share of medical expenses. There were initiatives such as the Community Health Assist Scheme, or CHAS. Then, in 2014, Lee unveiled the Pioneer Generation Package for those aged 65 and older at the time, to lift the burden of healthcare costs as citizens aged. The Merdeka and Majula Generation Packages followed for younger cohorts.
They are the ones who worked hard to build today's Singapore. The generation of independence, 60s, 70s, 80s, they paved the way for us to live a better life than themselves. That was their goal, they achieved it, and I think we should know that, and we should be grateful to them.
Lee also introduced enhanced measures to help every family own a home. Families buying their first home are subsidized up to $80,000 under the enhanced CPF housing grant. Those who choose to live with or close to their parents enjoy a proximity housing grant. New classification of flats gave singles more choices on location. 80% of Singapore residents live in public housing, of which 90% own their home.
The house in Singapore is also a major way for us to level up the less successful and to give them a valuable asset and a retirement nest egg. We are using the HDB flat as a means to give every Singaporean household a stake.
Eligible seniors were given options to monetize their flats to fund retirement. There were also new flats with shorter leases, specially designed for seniors.
There will always be an HDB flat to meet every budget. And we can maintain a good social mix in every town and region.
Over the years, social schemes and support have been extended beyond the lower income to include middle-income households. The government's social spending stands at $56 billion in 2024, taking up 42% of the year's budget.
Altogether, we now spend 3 times as much on social programs every year as we did 15 years ago. And over the last 5 years, real wages of our bottom quintile have consistently grown faster than median wages. And that clearly shows that our approaches are working.
Beyond welfare, Lee recognized that social policies would have to evolve alongside changes in society's views. He tackled a deeply divisive issue before handing over leadership. The government repealed Section 377A, a law which criminalized sex between men.
I believe this is the right thing to do and something that most Singaporeans will now accept. This will bring the law into line with current social mores and I hope provide some relief to gay Singaporeans. What we seek is a political accommodation, one that balances different legitimate views and aspirations among Singaporeans. In a society where diverse groups have strongly held opposing views, everyone has to accept that no group can have things all their way. All groups should exercise restraint because that's the only way we can move forward as one nation together.
From the very start of his political career, Lee recognized the impact of policies and their potential to improve people's lives. He gave a glimpse of how he dealt with the matter on the ground, serving 4 decades as Member of Parliament for Teck Ghee in a single seat, and later as part of the Ang Mo Kio Group Representation constituency.
So I've always paid a lot of attention to my MPS cases, my Meet the People session cases. 9 out of 10 are routine, but always keep my eye open for that last 10th one, where the policy has gone wrong, the implementation is not right, or maybe the policy is wrong and has to be changed, and we have to do something, intervene, and put it right. So I won't tell you which ones, otherwise they'll all come and look for me. But I have red stickers on my table, so when such a case comes, I put a red sticker and I see to it personally.
He grasps details, data, information, and specifics very well and retains them. Residents are delighted when he remembers them by name. Some of our residents were children born in Teck Ghee nearly 40 years ago, now are adults, and when they meet PM can recollect the time when either he presented them with EduSave awards when they were young, and now they themselves are carrying their own babies. So he's got a fantastic memory and affection for residents.
For good policies to be in place, Lee was certain how the Singapore system needed to work.
Politics goes first because good politics and good policies must go together. For the system to provide stable, consistent, good outcomes over the long term, politics and policy have to fit closely together. And if either one goes wrong, the system may well malfunction. For the economy, we are making good progress transforming our industries. We are servicing advanced jet turbines, researching new cures for diseases, and pushing boundaries in fintech services. Our seaport and airport are expanding to meet the growing demands of a dynamic Asia. The 2 integrated resorts, or IRs, are being enhanced to attract more tourists. Our tech and startup scenes are flourishing.
By Lee Hsien Loong's 15th year in office as Prime Minister, Singapore's economy was buoyant, but a global crisis was looming. On the 23rd of January 2020, Singapore's first imported case of COVID-19 was confirmed. A multi-ministry task force swung into action to contain the virus. As local transmissions rose, the Disease Outbreak Response System Condition, or DORSCON, was raised from yellow to orange on 7th February 2020. Faced with the unknown, Singaporeans rushed to stock up on food and other supplies. The following day, Lee calmed the nation.
So there's no reason to panic. We're not locking down the city or confining everybody to stay at home. We have ample supplies. There's no need to stock up with instant noodles or tin food or toilet paper, as some people did yesterday. But the real test is to our social cohesion and psychological resilience. Fear and anxiety are natural human reactions. We all want to protect ourselves and our families from what is still a new and unknown disease. But fear can do more harm than the virus itself. It can make us panic.
Over the course of the year, Lee would address the public directly 7 times, explaining Singapore's stance as the situation evolved. On each occasion, Lee spoke in several languages.
Saudara-saudari sekalian, Kewe Tongbao.
Viewers of these broadcasts dubbed his little porcelain cup magical, joking that it seemed to give the Prime Minister extraordinary multilingual abilities. Prime Minister Lee was, in fact, trilingual. While the multi-ministry task force hosted daily media briefings and tallied new cases, Lee's speeches were indispensable in assuring the nation through the crisis.
Despite these immense challenges, I say to you, do not fear. Do not lose heart. Singapore will not falter in its onward march.
Lee personally met frontline medical workers and those in the task force, giving them moral support. There were times when he had to be stern, to persuade people to comply with the circuit breaker safety measures.
But please understand, we are telling you to stay at home for your own safety. Older people are more vulnerable to the virus. If we catch COVID-19, it's a serious matter. Our chances of dying are much higher. And if we get infected and spread the virus to our friends around our age, or bring the virus back home to our families, then we put them in grave danger. So please stay home.
Singapore's economy took a hard hit in 2020. Total GDP contracted by a record 5.4%. The government set aside over $100 billion across 4 budgets to support workers, businesses, households, and individuals through the pandemic. A total of $42.9 billion was drawn from past reserves over 3 years to manage the pandemic. When the circuit breaker ended and infection rates stabilized, Lee felt the need to secure a fresh mandate.
We have no assurance that the pandemic will be over before this government's term must end next April. And that is why I have decided to hold the general election now. You have my word. Together with my older colleagues like Teo Chee Hean and Tharman Shanmugaratnam, as well as the younger 4G ministers, I will see this through. I'm determined to hand over Singapore intact and in good working order to the next team.
In the hard-fought 2020 elections, the PAP won 83 out of 93 seats, but lost a second GRC, Sengkang, to the Workers' Party. The new parliament would have 10 elected opposition members of parliament and 2 non-constituency MPs. Lee formally designated Pritam Singh from the Workers' Party as leader of the opposition.
The election has shown a strong desire among Singaporeans for greater diversity of views in politics. Voters want the PAP to form the government, but they also want more robust debate of policies and plans. And this trend is here to stay. In Singapore, the PAP government has been able to do the right thing for Singaporeans, sometimes difficult and hard things, and still get re-elected. Sometimes we've paid a price in the vote, but overall, we have continued to win elections. And therefore, the government has been able to think long-term, well beyond the next general election. We have no incentive to kick the can down the road, because down the road we will very likely meet the can ourselves again. And therefore we make plans over 50, 60 years, or in the case of climate change, 100 years. As a result, the country progresses, Singapore benefits, and the PAP continues to win elections. So far. It's a virtuous, self-reinforcing cycle. This model has worked well for Singapore. Once broken, it will be very difficult to put back together again.
Lee had originally planned to step down after the general elections, but would now delay the succession. When vaccines were available, Lee took the lead and a nationwide vaccination program went into full swing. A new strategy would take Singapore from pandemic to endemic, with borders reopening and economic activities resuming. Lee also explained how Singapore's reserves were a tremendous advantage, a precious resource that made all the difference in times of crisis.
It gave us confidence. It gave others confidence in us. We had the financial muscle to do everything we needed to do without getting heavily into debt, unlike so many other countries. It's a tremendous luxury. Without the reserves, would we have dared to pre-order vaccines even before they were tested and proven and produced? Would we have been able to pay up to 75% of salaries in the crisis, in the job support scheme, to protect workers and to prevent companies from closing? So we spent $40 billion in the end. Is $40 billion enough? We can never say for sure how much is enough because we don't know what kind of crisis we will face in the future or how our investments will fare.
Twice during his leadership, Lee's government had tapped into past reserves. Opposition MPs have questioned the size of the reserves and suggested using it to fund social policies. But Lee emphasizes taking a long view on the reserves.
I have spent 40 years of my life stewarding, safeguarding, improving this system, continuing the work of those who had come before me. Now I'm preparing to hand over to my successor, in good order, a Singapore which is more prosperous, more secure. I ask everyone to help them maintain the prudent policies that have served us well, to keep Singapore on the right track so that we can all continue to benefit from the nation's success for many years to come.
In 2022, Lawrence Wong was named by his peers as leader of the 4G or Fourth Generation team. As Prime Minister designate, Wong will lead a new cabinet to continue long-term strategies initiated by Lee. Lee had stayed true to his vision, set out 2 decades earlier, of transforming Singapore into a city full of life and energy, a place where people want to live, work, and play.
Somebody asked me at a dialogue, if God appeared before you and offered you 3 wishes for Singapore, what would you ask for? What I would like to have is that we be blessed with a divine discontent. Always not quite satisfied with what we have, always driven to do better. At the same time, we have the wisdom to count our blessings so that we know how precious Singapore is and we know how to enjoy it and to protect it. As I prepare to hand over Singapore in good order to my successor, I feel a sense of satisfaction and completeness. I've done my duty, and I'm very happy that I chose this path of public service all those many years ago.